Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Gaskin.
You're welcome.
Okay. Item 77 is minutes of previous meetings.
Mr. President,
Mr. Cunningham.
I make a motion to approve the minutes and the executive session certification as presented.
Have a motion by Mr. Cunningham. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Crouch. Any comments or discussion regarding previous? All right, not seeing any. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Line item 78, revision of board policy 6470. Mrs. Townsend.
Yes, we currently have in place policy 6470, which is payment of claims, and basically that policy states that you give me as your director of business permission to pay claims as long as we are within the parameters with the State Board of Accounts. And part of that policy is that as we prepare claims, we put them on a docket. I bring that docket to you, you look it over and give us permission to pay the claims, and then at that point we mail checks out to appropriate vendors or also the payroll of our employees. And State Board of Accounts is asking schools that allow for payment of those claims to be made early, like prior to a board meeting, in cases of where a board meeting is canceled or interest may incur, like in the case of a credit card payment, or it might be a burden to the vendor to wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks before another board meeting takes place for you to give that permission. And this has been a policy that we.
Smith, any comments or discussion regarding the revision of the board policy for 6470?
Jill, you said that this has been your policy all along?
It has been our practice. All along.
Practice.
Our practice.
Your policy is your practice. I got
Yes,
you.
yes. So in other words, like when we cancel a meeting, or we have credit card payments come in that we have to, but yet a board meeting is a week out, I need to go ahead and make that payment and mail that check so that we avoid any interest.
Payroll's that way too, right?
Payroll.
In between
Correct,
fall
in
between
between,
months.
yes. Because we have our meetings on the first and third weeks of the month. Sometimes there's 5 Mondays, so that might stretch out to 3 weeks between meetings. Our payroll is bi-weekly, so there would be another instance where we need to go ahead and pay staff. And then when you get those claim dockets, it's clearly marked that with a check mark that states those are payments that were made between board meetings. So that's why the board, or State Board of Accounts, would like us to be neat and tidy and know that you have given me permission to pay those claims. It's certainly not anything that would not show up on a claim docket ever, and it would just meet those specific parameters when I would need to make those payments.
Thank you.
I've got a comment too. I understand reoccurring and, you know, expenses that we know that are going to come up. I would like to still keep it as an exception for any capital expenditures and things of that type. You know, I just still personally think that the board needs to approve any major projects or anything that we have going prior to those being paid. And that would be my only exception to it.
Yes, and most of the time you're going to see that in purchase order anyway, because purchase orders, or they, you know, other policies state that we have to put on a purchase order and let you know prior to an expense when we make it over $10,000 or $4,000, whatever it is. So you're going to know about it anyway. But yes, I will certainly follow that rule that we will not make those payments prior to a board meeting without your prior knowledge.
With any more Christmas trees.
Well, that was my point. Yeah. Any other comments or discussion? All right. We have a motion by Mr. Gaskin and a second by Mr. Smith. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Line item 79, personnel. Mr. McKenzie.
Yes, Mr. President, we have the following personnel items for the board's consideration this evening. Victoria Schmerber to be hired as a paraprofessional at Mississinewa High School effective immediately. Evan Hammond to be hired as the JV baseball coach at the high school, effective immediately. Alex Corbin to be hired as a volunteer coach for boys golf at the high school, effective immediately. Andrew Everts has resigned as the varsity boys basketball coach and physical education teacher, effective at the end of the school year. Corey Wilson has resigned as a fifth grade teacher at Northview Elementary, effective at the end of the school year. Kylie Elliott to be hired as an RJ Basket Middle School track coach, effective immediately. Aaron Robinson to be hired as a RJ Basket Middle School track coach,
He
effective.
hasn't resigned yet, is that the deal?
I got that today, and
Okay.
I didn't think it was necessary to run it through.
I
We'll run it
figured
through
it,
the next
yeah.
meeting.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Miller and a second by Mrs. Freitas. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 80, conference request. Mr. McKenzie.
Yes, we have the following conference requests for the board's consideration this evening. Michelle Stanley, Brooke Smith, and Cheryl Mathias to attend the Prevent Child Abuse Training on April 11th at Ivy Tech in Marion at a total cost of $60 to be paid for from the Northview and Westview travel accounts. Joel Sumner and Leah Call to attend Teaching the Declaration of Independence on April 20th in Indianapolis at no cost to the corporation, and we would recommend approval of these conference requests as presented.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Smith?
move to approve the conference requests as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Freitas. Any comments or discussion regarding the conference request? Not seeing any. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 81, facilities report. Mr. McKenzie.
Yes, we just had a public work session that was pretty exhaustive about facilities. I just want to follow up that we will check the feasibility of handrails at the high school upper bleachers and come back to the board the next meeting. Hopefully it'll be the next meeting with an estimate on that and go from there. We don't have anything else to present on facilities,
Okay.
but we would like to make a recommendation that the board approve the summer maintenance projects plan as it has been discussed and presented.
Okay. What's the board's pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mrs. Freitas.
I move that we approve the summer maintenance plan as presented.
Have a motion by Mrs.
I'll
Freitas.
second.
Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Gaskin. Any comments or discussion regarding the summer project maintenance? Okay, not hearing any. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll just add to that, Mr. Banks, that you don't have to wait till the spring to bring us something. If there's something about the facilities that you would like for us to explore and investigate in terms of implementing as a project, no matter how big or small, feel free at any time of the year to bring us that idea or that thought, and we will discuss it and certainly look into it and pursue that if that seems to be conducive and needed for our school corporation. So,
Sure, yep, thank you.
Mr. McKenzie, sir,
yes.
I'd like to ask our athletic director a question. Football season's over, 1 year under our belt with that new field. What has been done, if anything? How did the field hold up? What maintenance needs to be done to it, or how do you do it? Or is there any?
It held up very well. We had a few issues. Some of the hash marks were coming up, which we knew was a possibility. They left us the material to be able to put that in, and there was no issues. And then in September, late September, kind of did a final walkthrough, and there was one spot that had kind of a sinkhole, and they came back and fixed that. Those are the only two issues that I know of. continued maintenance, about once every 100 hours. Field will be 100 hours of use. The field will be groomed with the groomer that came with it. But outside of that, that's about the only maintenance that we have. The sprint turf has been great with questions. I emailed them a question a couple weeks ago. They'll get back with me right away. They've been good to work with, in my opinion. Any issues we've had or any questions we've had, they've got with us right away, fixed it, or given us direction that we need.
Good.
I'd assume the track team's excited.
They're very excited. I talked to quite a few of them, and obviously it's better than what they had last year, but the track that they used before, they said they can just tell such a difference on their joints and on their knees, and
More spring.
just very soft surface that makes it nice to run. Yeah, they're very excited.
Will you need less help for meets because of that?
No, we'll probably need more.
Oh, really?
The timing system and.
Well, that kind of defeated that.
Volunteers or something.
What do you got?
You can't announce Mrs. Winger has she's got.
I want that job till I'm 70.
Yeah,
It's
was
been,
it,
it's been better than I think we had hoped. We knew it was gonna be nice, we knew it was gonna be great for all of us, but it's been better than.
well, the kids down there today, was that high school and junior high, or was that just high?
Started their track as well.
Was that all high school
It was both
or,
combinations.
well, combination? There were a lot of kids out there today. So I was wondering, yeah, I didn't know. Have you had a chance to run the timing systems? Yeah, I mean,
We've had some glitches in terms of getting computers and things. I think we're fine. We had the software installed, and then we had to get a more updated computer. So that process has taken longer than we would like. But again, we'll learn kind of trial and error. And that company has also been great. We've Skyped a few times. And we've done TeamViewer where they've logged on. So I don't feel great. But I feel confident that.
we have the grant count, we have the grant for this year, correct?
Excuse me?
Do we have the grant for this year?
We do, yes.
So,
Yeah, we'll have it figured out.
I'll just add one thing in terms of financing. The warranty on that field is 8 years. We are hoping for 10, 12 years, maybe more, but Jill has budgeted, beginning with year 1 of that field, to replace it in 8 years. Hopefully, we won't have to, but we've gotten some amounts from different school districts on what it costs to replace the field. Obviously, the foundation doesn't have to be replaced, but just the field surface. And we haven't got the same amount from anybody, but we budgeted high, and so we are budgeting over the next 8 years to have the money at any point after that to replace that field if and when necessary. So,
Chance, has the baseball, softball teams been on that?
Yeah, they use it.
So I went down there today, there's obviously a nice day enough day, they didn't have to be, but that's what I heard that they were using that. So. Not that we needed a track or anything, we've only been 35, 40 years since we had a new track. We did surface it once, but I mean, it's so 6 lane to 8 lane, I think it'll.
the track was I'm not sure that the community realizes that project was
Included.
more than a football field. The track was a significant portion of the cost, not as much as,
No.
but still, it was about $500,000.
Did they ever pin Northview for the, to be able to line it? Did they ever do that?
We have the materials that wasn't done because the schedule this year worked out where they didn't really need to use it for football.
Okay.
So
But they were supposed to pin it for us though, weren't they? So,
They did.
they did, okay. So I make sure.
Anybody else have anything on facilities? All right, we'll move on. Item 82, legislative update. Mr. Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was gonna announce it, but I'll tell you here in a minute. The legislative session is over, but not over. So, here's just some final legislative, sort of a legislative scorecard for you. 901 bills were introduced for consideration. 212 bills were passed and will become law. There were 110 bills introduced that had either implications or issues with K-12 education, and 25 of those 110 bills became law. And I think every one of those comes into effect not until July 1st. Here's what bills died. House Bill 1230, which was around school safety. Senate Bill 242, state and local administration. That's a bill that would govern local administration and taxation. And then House Bill 1315, school corporate financial management. That bill died. But like I said, I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. So what key bills passed? House Bill 101, which is education funding. Everybody likes more money. So it's up to $25 million that can be transferred in 17-18, and $75 million for state year 18-19. And again, I'll talk about some of that in the beginning. But and I'm really highlighting the major bills. I mean, there's some other bills that I sent Leslie and Tab about sunscreen and just things for Chance about for heat, to be able to deal with heat training. That's going to be a requirement for them to go through. So I really just sent, I'm just going to talk about the big ones, and the smaller ones I sent to them, and I'm sure we'll probably hear about it in April, but and I can send those to you too, but I figured they'd probably be the ones to look at it first. Back to where I was. Senate Bill 65, human sexuality, requires schools, before providing instruction on human sexuality to students, to provide parents with a form requesting consent or dissent to provide the instruction. Senate Bill 387, teacher licensing, that includes provisions regarding the supplemental differential pay for teachers, as well as modification credentials and requirements for teachers working under a career or specialist permits. It allows for differential payment for teachers in excess of their salary for specific training, special education, areas of science, technology, core areas that they feel like might be difficult to be able to retain teachers. Supplemental payment if a teacher earns a master's degree. So there's a lot of provisions in that I'm sure you guys will want to look at, or it'll get torn apart. House Bill 1426, educational matters. It requires the Indiana State Board of Education to establish one standard diploma for individuals who successfully complete high school graduation requirements. Current law, as you know, establishes 4 different diplomas, and I'm sure that'll be kicked around. And then today at about 12:40, I'm on like a link for legislative news, and I get like an email. The governor announced today that he's going to call a special session of the General Assembly and for May, and he calls it putting time back on the clock. So his priorities that he has for that is he outlined 5 specific points that he wanted as unfinished business for them, for the legislature to address. One of those is increased funding for school security by $5 million in 19. Allow school corporations to obtain funding advances for school security equipment and capital purchases. It's going to provide Muncie Community Schools with a one-time $12 million loan from the Common School Loan Fund. Now, these are his goals. These aren't things that are actually going to happen unless that's just what he wants to get accomplished. Conform with the federal tax reform changes by updating the state's conformity date of February 11th and 18, and then comply with the Internal Revenue Service rules to protect federal taxpayer information. One of the big key points, however, that he continues to bring out that they didn't get accomplished that he wanted was a plan for school security. That was going to be addressed in the summer study committee, so I'll be interested to see how that plays out. So here I thought I was going to be done until the fall, and May puts it right back in my lap again. I'll answer any questions you have. Like I said, I sent Tab, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 different bills of different things that, like I said, from sunscreen to heat stroke to all different kind of things that they passed for. Notice one of the other ones was interesting too, which I thought helps our staff out a lot, and we may get it already, is that when CPS removes a child, they're required to notify the schools. So if you can think about it as schools are trying to get a hold of a parent about picking up their child, or they're worried about it, before they didn't have to give them notice, so here they are calling the people that they've been removed from to get their child taken care of. So I don't know who that's, but each corporation will have a, or school, I'm assuming, will have a point of contact for them to establish. So, and I answer any questions you might have.
Anything from administration? Any questions for Chris?
We just appreciate Mr. Cunningham keeping us up to date and informed all along.
Chris, they didn't,
Sounds like your job isn't over.
Yeah.
they didn't, Ball State thing didn't pass, did that?
No,
Okay. so-
no, it didn't. As a matter of fact, that's one of the other things that's listed in the,
And then,
that they think might be, that he might try to
Gonna try-
address.
and that
if you're gonna try to fund it.
$12 million, that $10 million, that was an interest-free loan, right?
It's common school. Well, it's common school, so it'd be low interest.
Okay.
I don't think it's interest-free.
I thought that's what they said they was gonna try.
You know, more
Not
than,
interest-free.
yeah, you know, what you,
It used to be around 4%.
But I thought they said something about they were gonna try to give them one where they'd have to pay the state back, but it would be a.
it'll be interesting to see what they, you know, what they do with it. But it, you know, the whole thing is that the way that it's set up, I'm not sure that, so the board's not responsible for paying it back. It's a special committee that's selected from that part of it, so I wonder
I'm
how
gonna
that's
say,
gonna work.
is the board still intact? The board's been removed, haven't they?
If you're, yeah, the board, it's a special committee that's overtaking
State
that right now,
assigned.
which is what, I think a lot of that is what slowed down the legislative session, because there were a lot of people that were upset about trying to push that through, and there, and the ISBA and, I'm assuming local superintendents and, you know, business departments were all saying, you know, look, that's not a good practice to take that, you know, to take that over, and now they're gonna give a $12 million loan to a group of,
Volunteers.
yeah, volunteers that are basically, you know, running it, so.
All right, anybody have any questions for Chris or comments? Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your work.
Oh, you're most welcome.
All right, item 83, donations. Mr. McKenzie.
Yes, we have the following donations to present for your consideration this evening. To the Unified Champions Track Meet from attorney Ann Zabrowski in the amount of $150. From Matthews Volunteer Fire Department in the amount of $200. From Ivanhoe's in the amount of $100. And from Kennedy's Heating and Cooling in the amount of $100. Earthwise Plastics Incorporated in the amount of $250. From Brian and Lisa Baker in the amount of $60. And from Hoosier Jiffy Print, 5 banners. So we would recommend approval of all these donations as presented this evening.
Thank you,
Mr. President,
Mr. Gaskin.
I make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendations on donations as presented.
Motion by Mr. Gaskin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Crouch. Any comments or discussion regarding donations? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 84, claims against corporation. Mrs. Townsend, please.
Claims are totaling $1,447,928.67 for your approval, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. President,
Mr. Cunningham.
I make a motion to approve the claims as presented.
Motion by
I'll
Mr.
second.
Cunningham and a second by Mr. Gaskin. Any comments or discussion regarding claims? All right, not seeing any. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 85, correspondence and other business. Mr. Kinsey.
Yes, we have a few items, mostly reminders, but we're going to go out of the traditional order, and Mrs. Winter is going to go first. So I'll pass it on to Mrs. Winter.
Feel free to announce it if you'd like.
Well, I'll let you talk about it. It's regarding the e-learning grant, so go
We
ahead.
were happy to receive an e-learning grant in the amount of $75,000 after a few years of trying, and we're gonna use it in our project Lead the Way to enhance our STEM education in the elementary and the middle school in the area of training and equipment. So we're very excited.
Great.
That's awesome.
You know, that's a big deal. That's a competitive
Great.
grant. We've worked at it for a few years, and so kudos to Mrs. Winter and the administrative team and the teachers involved with that.
You bet.
We appreciate their work.
Very good.
I'm impressed that that was the shortest vote you ever sent to us.
I'm trying to set the example that needs to happen in 15 minutes.
She knows I got a bad cold, and we're all tired, so. Any,
Well, they-
go ahead.
No, it's not. I don't
they
mean-
are
I don't mean
gonna-
to-
They are gonna present on it later in the summer, you know, everything that has happened this year in the area of STEMs and in the area of our Lilly grant and a couple other big grants. And it is very, very exciting to see. We just recently, and I'll share a little bit, and Susan, as a big part of this, are being recognized nationally for our national helper and our Peaceful Bus program that'll be coming. And we are being interviewed right now by a magazine called Rural Health in North Dakota over our telehealth program. So a lot of exciting things going on, and we're really looking forward. But I will put one plug in since Spike opened the door. I'm going to keep it below 2 minutes.
Good job.
I'm sorry.
Way to go,
I'm sorry.
Spike.
No, I'm just
And
kidding.
I say this too, a lot on behalf of the administrators, because the work that has gone into this for the last 2 years has required numerous hours outside of the school day of meetings and give and take and looking at the whole picture of what we want our foundation to look like at Mississinewa Community Schools. And we truly believe that the social and the mental health piece is as crucial as the academics. And what's transpiring out of that, we're getting kids that are becoming more confident in themselves during the school day, which means they become
Yeah,
more
academically, it's
risk
easier.
takers in their academic achievement.
But
And with the new program, it's not a program, it's a philosophy of the CTE courses, and the early college and career high school, I think we're just on the cutting edge of becoming, is probably one of the most proactive schools, especially with the clientele we have in the state. And it just takes a lot of work and a lot of vision to stay that course, because there's not instant gratification in it. And you have to believe that in a year from now, you're gonna see progress that you didn't see this year. And 2 years from now, you're gonna see more progress. And 3 years from now, you're gonna see more progress. And 5 years from now, when we're retired, we'll be sending wonderful graduation notes to the board, thanking this team for keeping that vision and keeping that focus on what's best for students. And I'm just appreciative of that.
Thank you, Mrs.
Yep,
Winter.
very good.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Mrs. Townsend? Okay, I think you're all aware that the April 9th meeting has been canceled. Most of the board will be at conference, along with myself, and so we have canceled that and sent out the public notices in that regard. The next meeting that is scheduled currently is April 23rd. And so we could meet the 16th if the board wants to make up the 9th meeting. I've discussed this with Mrs. Townsend, Mrs. Winter. I don't see a need that's pressing for that, but if the board would like to do that, obviously that's what we'll schedule and do.
We,
So
we could give
kind of
24,
throwing it into your,
we could give 48-hour notice if something we needed to take care of, right? If that's as long as they get, it just can't be a
I
weekend,
think it's
correct?
more than 48.
48
About
without,
72.
72, I
72?
thought.
okay, well, but it can't be a weekend, right?
Right, it can't be a Saturday and Sunday, can't count.
Yeah, the only thing that, as we discussed when we met the other day, just making sure that we, with your 6470, we still can pay bills, you know, that was the main thing. I mean, payroll, like we've had a call before while we were gone that we either missed a payroll or did something, so, you know, we wanna keep that reoccurring stuff moving.
So would the board like to meet the 16th or
Any
wait till the
preference?
23rd?
Any preference? Chris, Mike?
I'm fine with meeting on the 23rd.
We'll just push it to the 23rd.
Okay, all right, we'll do that there. Also note that the next ISBA regional meeting is Thursday, April 26th at 6 o'clock in Kokomo. And that's one that we like to attend because it's following the legislative session, at least most of it in this case. So you get to find out what the new laws are and the interpretations of those and what went into those and so on. So anybody that's interested in going, Leslie and I will be going definitely, but any board members, let Pam know.
I will.
Okay, Mr. Banks is going.
Yeah, I'll go.
Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Freitas are going. Anybody else? On the 26th. Okay. If you decide that in the next few days, call and let us know, and we'll get you signed up for that conference, or that meeting. And just a reminder, we have an executive session following this meeting, and that's all we
Tad,
have. Yes?
You have information on this thing?
Yes, if you're interested in attending, kind of an hors d'oeuvre and drinks rendezvous with one of the vendors down in San Antonio from 4 to 7 on Saturday evening. If you're interested in attending that,
That's
then
the
we'll
one I
get
sent
you
you.
registered for
I
that.
filled
Mrs.
on there
Freitas
a couple weeks ago.
is already indicated she wants to go, so we've got her
Terry and
her
George.
and her husband scheduled for that, so
I hadn't really thought about it.
let us
yet,
know
and
as soon as possible, and we'll get you registered. Anything from the principals tonight?
I just didn't know.
Okay, that's all we have under correspondence and other business.
Anybody have anything else to bring up, correspondence or other business? Okay. Move on to item 86, motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Mrs. Freitas, motion, Mr. Smith, second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Not seeing too many gifts. We are adjourned. Thank you.